I'm Daniel James, and you're listening to 7am. The federal court has ordered Andrew Forrest Fortescue to pay the Yindjibarndi people over $150 million. It's the biggest native title compensation payout in Australian history. But for Yindjibarndi leaders, the judgment is complicated. The payout is historic, but far below the $1.8 billion they were seeking. The case goes back more than 2 decades, when Fortescue's Solomon Hub mines in the Pilbara were built on Yindjibarndi land without the agreement of the traditional owners. And the payout includes only about $100,000 for economic loss, despite Fortescue making billions from the mines. So today, we're returning to a conversation we first aired before the court handed down its decision. Journalist Ben Abbatangelo tells Ashlyn McGee the story of Michael Woodley, the Yindjibarndi lawman who took on Andrew Forrest, and asks what is the true cost of mining someone else's country. It's Sunday, May 24. This episode was originally published in May 2024.
Ben, tell me about Yindjibarndi country and this small community of Narrawana and the man you met there, Michael Woodley.
So Yindjibarndi country is located in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. It is a very humble town with a big heart. It is got majestic hills and escarpments that are rich red colours. It's incredibly vast, like the whole of Western Australia, but the Pilbara region itself is quite an expansive space. And in my mind, it gets to the heart of the Australian story. It is a region that archives some of the earliest human thoughts. There is countless sites that map human occupation back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years. But at the same time, what's interfacing with that is everything that we understand to be contemporary. It is the epicenter of resource extraction. It is where, the majority of the world's iron ore is extracted from. There is offshore gas being plundered out of the waterways. And it gets to, I suppose, the heart of that ancient eternity clashing with the contemporary realities of modernity. So I first met Michael Woodley towards the end of 2020. He's a senior Yindjibarndi lawman and the CEO of the Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation, which is the prescribed body corporate to represent the interests of the Yindjibarndi people.
Mate, it's so good to reconnect, and it's just been a privilege to, you're just a remarkable man.
Oh, thank you. And for that, and thanks as well, right, for your views and comments.
I was fortunate enough to speak with Michael. He was zigzagging around town, was fortunate enough to get some of his time to hear about, his reflections. And I say this because for most Australians that are aware of who he is known because he's been the person that has stood up to Andrew Forrest.
Okay, and so how did Michael Woodley become this guy who's known for battling Andrew Forrest and his enormous mining interests?
So Andrew Forrest I think he's held up in the Australian imagination as, a great Australian bloke.
With a $20 billion fortune, Andrew Forrest is one of Australia's richest people. And as the founder of mining giant Fortescue, he's been a key business figure for decades.
But that wealth that Andrew Forrest has accrued that has transformed him into Australia's richest man, the bedrock of that is exploitation of Aboriginal people's country, and specifically the Yindjibarndi people's country.
I've had one message I give, and I've been giving this to ever since I became a businessman. The more you know Aboriginal people, the more you love them.
The crux of the story is that Andrew Forrest and Fortescue Metals Group in the early 2000s wanted to develop Yindjibarndi people's country. The problem for them was that the Yindjibarndi had already received native title status. So for Fortescue to legally start developing on their country under native title laws, they had to broker an agreement. So Michael Woodley and Andrew Forrest met in a small Roburn youth centre where Andrew Forrest marched in seeking to broker that agreement with Michael Woodley. Now, what Andrew Forrest came to the table with was essentially a fixed payment of roughly 0.057% of the mine's income. And for context, we're talking about a development that would last decades, that would churn out tens of billions of dollars. So when Michael Woodley refused to sign on to that agreement,
we read your agreement, we understand your agreement, and to be frank with you, it's crap, right?
Which he would also, if he was to do so, would be signing away, scores of sacred sites, would be signing away, really integral, important pieces of Yindjibarndi country that are central, to their mythology, to their existence, to their sustainment.
But there's a big issue here, Andrew, and the issue comes with, Yindjibarndi people looking after ourselves from the country that's making you rich, and your shareholders and your investors.
So Michael Woodley was seeking a 5% uncapped rate, and when, those talks broke down, it triggered a sprawling legal battle that has gone on for now close to 15 years.
Ben, how did it even become a legal battle? How did Fortescue Metals come to push ahead without approval from the native title holders?
Yeah, an important thing for this conversation is that a lot of people have an understanding that native title is land rights. It's not. Native title doesn't give traditional owner groups a right of veto. It doesn't enable them to say no to those that want to develop their country. It just gives them a statutory timeline to negotiate with those companies and forces them into coming to an agreement. So I suppose a really key point here is that not only did they proceed with the operations without authority, without that agreement, they also looked to finance a breakaway group.
This meeting held in March last year revealed the bitter divide between Michael Woodley's group, which opposes the project, and a breakaway group of landowners.
Okay, we're going to take a vote on this motion. Can I see the hands of those who support this motion? Big up, high. We're going to count the hands.
The meeting was ugly and physical. The breakaway group claimed to have won a vote by this show of hands, enabling them to negotiate directly with Fortescue. It was a big win for Twiggy Forrest.
And Fortescue just pushed ahead with their plans. In 2013, Fortescue opened its first Solomon mine Firetail on the Yindjibarndi people's country without an agreement, without their consent. That's bending reality, and fundamentally, in my mind, that's what has enabled Fortescue Metals Group to churn out close to $50 billion of profit without ever paying a cent to the people whose land they're mining. But interestingly, in the courts, in 2017, the federal court reaffirmed that the Yindjibarndi people had exclusive possession over that country. So that sprawling battle has culminated now in this compensation claim being lodged, in which the federal court will continue to commence hearings and likely hand down its verdict at the end of 2025.
I think one way of describing this is a sort of David and Goliath battle, which is a bit of a lazy comparison. But I just wonder how Michael Woodley sees this fight.
Yeah, I asked Michael that question when I first met him, and he took a very long pause. He had a relatively cheeky smile that washed over his face after he gathered his thoughts. And then he leant in and just said, look, Andrew might be the richest man in the country. He might have access to the best lawyers and mix it with the top end of town, but so what? That's not power. And then he again took another breath and leant in a little bit closer with his eyebrows raised and just basically said, you see, I'm a Yindjibarndi man. I know my law, I speak my language, and I walk the same lands that my ancestors have for tens of thousands of years. So if you want to talk about power, well, that's power. And I suppose in my mind, that's what has encapsulated, this story, and how one incredibly proud, stoic man with the support of his tiny community has battled and beat a mining tycoon on a shoestring budget.
After the break, why a huge cash payout won't come close to healing the wounds. Ben, tell me about where the legal battle is up to now. What's happening in the courts as we speak?
So the courts are listening to preliminary hearings for the compensation claim that the Yindjibarndi have lodged after 2020, when the High Court dismissed Fortescue's application to appeal its judgment. So after multiple court battles that have spanned multiple years, the court is now hearing this compensation claim, and it needs to put, I suppose, a numerical value on a whole lot of different things. It needs to consider what the financial value of, close to 250 sacred sites that have been destroyed, including rock art shelters that prove human habitation for more than 35,000 years. It needs to put a numerical value on the cultural and familial ties that have been broken, many of which that are beyond repair. They also have to decide how much of the $50 billion of iron ore profits that Fortescue has churned out of the Yindjibarndi people's lands belong to them. And then probably additionally, start to consider how much of the profits belong to the Yindjibarndi people over the years ahead, knowing that Fortescue's Solomon mines still has plenty of great days of extracting iron ore ahead of it. So, are the courts best placed to determine what is the just and right and moral outcome? Or can they purely just engage with this through a legal lens and try and come to a determination there? But I know either way, when I speak to Michael Woodley, yes, there is some solace in the sense that they are getting towards an outcome and they will receive compensation.
They need to be compensated, Our land was taken from us. We didn't withhold it. We didn't give it. We didn't sell it.
But if everyone had their time over again, Michael has said that he and many others in the community wish this just never happened in the first place.
Is that because it's caused such huge divisions in the community?
Well, the community is, in other hearings, the courts have heard how, family members no longer talk to one another. They avoid each other in the streets. There's enduring, lasting pain that, may never heal. It might take a generation to heal. It's the destruction of really significant sacred sites that get to the heart of a people's belief system, that gets to the heart of who they are. So in that context, I don't know how you can put, a numerical monetary value on stripping people from the things that sustain them.
How's Michael Woodley doing now?
Michael is someone that just appears to defy gravity. He is always smiling. He's always calm. He has always got a really deep sense of presence. When I speak to him, despite the busyness of his life and, the challenges that he, has to confront, it always just feels like you're the only person that matters in that moment. But, when I asked him about the journey and what he's learnt about himself, of course, he told me that, he's learnt to just let things be the way that they are.
I'm a serious man, right? But, I've learned to be mellow as well, right?
And that he's not necessarily going to change a rock into a flower, and that it's better to just let a rock be a rock.
Because you can't enforce something that is not willing to change.
So Michael has moved back out onto his homelands, which is around 100 k's out of Roebourne. So it is, 25 to 30 people there, I think, at the best of times. But for him, it's a spiritual reconnecting. He's really optimistic about the future. I think he's, really pleased that this is coming towards, or there's going to be a sense of closure, in the wake of these federal hearings. And I think he's just really, optimistic about turning, Roebourne and the Yindjibarndi nation into a thriving place and a thriving peoples. And I think, this is happening at a really important time when, extractivism in Australia is going to double, triple, quadruple down in the wake of the energy transition and the need to extract volumes of critical minerals to support that. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of eyes watching this, and it'll be really interesting to see, what that judge hands down towards the end of 2025.
Ben, thanks so much for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
"7am will be back tomorrow with an interview with Social Services Minister Tanya Plibersek. After another devastating week of violence against women and children, the government is resisting calls for a Royal Commission. As consultation starts on Labor's second action plan to end violence against women and children, she argues the country needs action, not another inquiry.
What people who work on the front line have said to me again and again is we've been consulted. We've had 8 royal commissions and major reports in recent years with 1,000 recommendations. Our Family, Domestic and Sexual Violence Commissioner, Michaela Cronin, last year totalled up all these recommendations, and I've got a lot of sympathy for the argument of frontline workers that we've been consulted, we know what the problem is, what we need is sustained action to change the incidence of violence in our community.
I'm Daniel James. Thanks for listening.